It's 1948 in New York City. Walking downtown is a man from Egypt, and he's in America to study education. To the untrained eye, this is a quiet, unassuming man of color. But through the lens of history, this man is actually the intellectual father of al-Qaeda, a terrorist organization that a little over 50 years later, in that very same New York City, would be responsible for destroying the World Trade Center and beginning a global war on terror. Whew. What's up, everybody? Travis here, and I'm back with my newest book review. Today we got a heavy one, The Looming Tower, Al-Qaeda and the Road to 9/11 by Lawrence Wright. Before I get started with the book review, I'd encourage everybody to like the video, give it a thumbs up, comment down below, share your thoughts and feedback with me, and if you're so inclined, subscribe to my YouTube channel. It really motivates me to keep making these videos. Starting with Lawrence Wright, the author. He is an American author and journalist. He is a staff writer for the New Yorker magazine, and he's also a fellow at the New York University School of Law. This book, The Looming Tower, it talks about the origin and rise of al-Qaeda and also talks about the intelligence blunders by the CIA and the FBI on the American side that could have prevented 9/11. I want to start off this book review by going back to that man from the introduction, the intellectual father of al-Qaeda. His name is Saeed Qutb, and he visited the United States in 1948 as a government scholar from Egypt. In Egypt, he was one of the leading intellectuals of a group called the Muslim Brotherhood, which was an organization that promoted a society run by Islamic principles and law. When he arrived in the United States, he was immediately disgusted by what he saw. He saw a lot of racial discrimination and segregation. He saw a lot of sexual openness without any guardrails. He saw a lot of materialistic and consumerist type behavior, and he also saw religious institutions that were very morally empty. And so he came to America in 1948 as an Egyptian government scholar, and he left America in 1950 as a disillusioned critic of Western modernity. And when he went back to Egypt, he engaged in a lot of radicalized extreme behavior. This led to him being imprisoned by the second president of Egypt, Gamal Abdel Nasser. And while he was in prison, he was tortured brutally, and in 1966 he was executed, which turned him into a martyr. And so if Saeed Qutb was the intellectual father of al-Qaeda, and if he wrote the script for al-Qaeda, a man by the name of Ayman al-Zawahiri directed the play. This was an Egyptian physician. He was born to an elite Egyptian family, and when he was very young, he had an uncle who was a close associate of Saeed Qutb, and so he digested and consumed all of that radical ideology. And Ayman al-Zawahiri eventually became one of the chief strategists for Osama bin Laden, and also one of the de facto leaders of the al-Qaeda terrorist organization. So now going to al-Qaeda. When I first picked up this book, I thought that al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden, I knew that they were evil, terrible human beings, but I thought that they came from poverty, from little to no money, and that they were from the caves of the Middle East. And this isn't entirely true. Before I talk about Osama bin Laden, I actually wanted to bring up his father, Mohammed bin Laden. Mohammed bin Laden was actually one of the most powerful and rich businessmen in Saudi Arabia. He founded the Saudi bin Laden Group, and he had a near monopoly on Saudi construction projects. He was in and he was on good terms with the kingdom's rulers and the elite of Saudi Arabia, and he was also entrusted with important construction projects, renovating and expanding Mecca and Medina, which were extremely sensitive and prestigious construction projects within the entire Muslim world. And when Mohammed bin Laden died in 1967, he embedded his family into the political and economic elite of Saudi Arabia, and he also left his children, Osama bin Laden included, vast amounts of wealth, riches, connections, and status. And so now we go to Osama bin Laden, the deadliest terrorist of the 21st century and the founder of the al-Qaeda terrorist organization. And so Osama bin Laden, he was born with connections, status, and wealth. He was radicalized in the 1980s when the Soviet Union was at war with the Islamists in Afghanistan. When it came to his problems with America, he really hated America, and he hated the fact that the Americans were occupying Middle Eastern lands. He didn't see his war with America and the United States so much as a war against a country and a political entity. He saw it as a war that extended from the medieval crusades, those holy wars, where the Christians and the Jews were pitted against the Muslims. And that's how bin Laden saw it. And when you talk about recruitment into al-Qaeda, bin Laden and his associates, they recruited young men into al-Qaeda by promoting the concept of martyrdom, which is dying to promote a particular cause or belief. But al-Qaeda put a very perverse and extremist view on martyrdom, and they twisted it for their own benefit. They extended martyrdom to include suicide bombings and killing innocent civilians, which the Muslim world, the greater Muslim world, just entirely rejected and denounced. And that was one of the perverse and extremist ways of al-Qaeda and how they brought these young, disillusioned, miserable men into their group by saying that, okay, your life is miserable, but your life will have meaning if you kill yourself for the benefit of al-Qaeda and the Muslim world. And that's how they got their recruitment. Shifting our sights now to the Americans, and specifically the intelligence agencies, the CIA and the FBI. Both agencies knew information and intelligence pieces. They never put the pieces of that puzzle together, which would have prevented 9/11. The CIA knew about bombings that introduced al-Qaeda to the world stage in the early and the mid-1990s, and they were also aware of a secret al-Qaeda meeting in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. And this al-Qaeda meeting was attended by two al-Qaeda extremists, in particular Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Midhar. Hazmi and Midhar eventually made their way to the United States, and the CIA knew that these two men were in the United States. They were using their real names, associating with extremists. They were enrolling in US flight schools, and the CIA knew about this, didn't inform the FBI, and that is considered the biggest intelligence omission in United States history. And in July 2001, a couple months before 9/11, FBA field offices in Phoenix, Arizona learned that al-Qaeda extremists were enrolling in US flight schools. When they sounded the alarm, FBI headquarters did nothing. Then, in August 2001, the FBI learned of a man named Zacharias Moussaoui who enrolled in a Minnesota flight school. He was immediately detained by the flight instructors because of his he repeatedly wanted to know about flying jumbo jets, and he was also completely disinterested in knowing how to land a plane, which is just a massive alarm bell. And so when the FBI leadership learned about this, when the field officers wanted to investigate the laptop and push this investigation further, FBI leadership completely disregarded it and rejected that request. And then weeks leading up to 9/11, the CIA finally put Hazmi and Midhar on the watch list. They notified the FBI, but there was no urgency, there was no escalation. And so 9/11, September 11th happened, and the World Trade Center fell, and the rest is history. I want to talk about or bring up three important quotes from the book that I think are really helpful in fleshing out the book and what it's all about. The first quote: radicalism usually prospers in the gap between rising expectations and declining opportunities. This is especially true where the population is young, idle, bored, where the art is impoverished, where entertainment, movies, theater, music is policed or absent altogether, and where young men are set apart from the consoling and socializing presence of women. Martyrdom promised such young men an ideal alternative to a life that was so sparing in its rewards. Next quote: if the CIA had provided the FBI with the intelligence they requested, the FBI would have learned of al-Qaeda's secret meetings and that the al-Qaeda operatives were in America. Because there was a pre-existing indictment for bin Laden in New York, and Midhar and Hazmi were his associates, the FBI had the authority to follow the suspects, wiretap their apartment, intercept their communications, clone their computer, investigate their contacts, all the essential steps that might have prevented 9/11. In so many respects, the Trade Center dead formed a kind of universal parliament representing 62 countries and nearly every ethnic group and religion in the world. There was an ex-hippie stockbroker, the gay Catholic chaplain of the New York City Fire Department, a Japanese hockey player, an Ecuadorian sous chef, a Barbie doll collector, a vegetarian calligrapher, a Palestinian accountant. Al-Qaeda had aimed its attacks at America, but it struck all of humanity. I give this book a 9.6. Thanks so much, everyone, for watching. All the best. Bye.